I'm Valerie Hendershot, your host, and this is Profit Boss Radio, The Retirement Years, episode 167. The Retirement Years on Profit Boss Radio is your weekly wealth building and retirement mastermind. Profit Boss is also a movement for women who want to reach their full wealth potential and be financially free. Let me be your guide as you defy the odds, take control of your money, grow your wealth, and retire well. Do you want the secrets of wealth and retirement to be yours? This is the place. I'm Valerie Hendershot. I'm a certified financial planner running a leading advisory firm for women and couples, and I'm sharing with you real stories from real life and real people who are making it happen. Forget Wall Street. You ready? Let's do this. Hello, Profit Boss. I hope you are surviving and even thriving during this pandemic. And it's honestly my deepest desire that this podcast contributes in a meaningful way to your ability to put the structures in place in your financial life that help you build confidence and lean into optimism for the future. I have an interesting story about today's guest. She actually shipped me her book several months ago, and it sat on my desk. And one day I was just sort of moving it around, and I opened it up, and there was a handwritten card from her inside it. And, very much engaged reciprocity for me. I thought this woman sat down and wrote me a card, and here I haven't even looked at her book. And the reason was the title of the book. And the title of the book is Patriarchy Stress Disorder. And just being honest, because I think it's the best thing to be, I have a reaction or had a reaction to the word patriarchy or the concept of patriarchy stress disorder. But I thought, okay, I'll give it a go. And I read it, and you've probably had the experience in life when you actually read the article and then the headline seems more subtle or less offensive or less wrong, less impeachable. And so I read the book and I thought, okay, I actually see this. I can actually see the phenomenon in the gender of women, my cohort of fellow female business owners. And I sat with it for a couple weeks and I started to get almost feverish about it because now I see it everywhere. And I really think if you listen, the story that she's telling, which isn't about men versus women, and you'll hear her acknowledge that specifically, the story that she's telling is one that really highlights why many people, human beings, have become resentful of capitalism, of free markets, of doing business, right? Because it's got itself a bad name because unfortunately, many bad human traits have been enacted inside business. Now, you and I both know that there are people who doing good things in business and people doing bad things in business. And I hold myself out as being someone who acts in alignment with my principles and values. And I know you do too, or you probably wouldn't still be listening to me. And so I now feel like I've put these glasses on and I just see it everywhere, right? So I don't know what else to say, except I really hope you enjoy my interview with Dr. Valerie. I think she's absolutely lovely. Consider taking her up on her offer for a free virtual workshop. You can find out more about her free virtual workshop at hilariehendershot.com/167. Enjoy my interview with Dr. Valerie Rein. Dr. Valerie, welcome to Profit Boss Radio.
I'm so happy to be here, Hillary. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell me, I am very curious. I don't normally ask, what's your story at the beginning of an interview? It's a little overdone, but I want to know, how did you discover these barriers to women's fullest expression? How did you discover that this was happening in your own life?
I was living a life of my dreams, or I thought. I so thought. I had a thriving psychology practice in New York, 2 graduate degrees in psychology. I had a family and home I adored. And one day I was on the phone with a client when I noticed I was smiling with only the right side of my face, and the left side of my face just hung in there. And so did my left arm. And I ended up in the ER with symptoms of a stroke. And after scanning me up and down for a day, I spent this lovely spa day in the ER, in the hospital gown. The verdict was my official diagnosis was quote unquote just stress, which relieved and also puzzled me to no end because I actually did not feel stressed. I was doing the work I loved. My life was good, really good. And so having that time to think when I wasn't answering phones, I wasn't taking care of everybody there in the ER, I started looking underneath that security blanket of workaholism and stress. And underneath there was a very, very disturbing and very uncomfortable realization that actually underneath it all, I wasn't as happy and fulfilled as I looked on paper. And it was really devastating. It was really devastating to get in touch with that because I literally have done everything I knew how to do. I succeeded professionally and personally.
Certainly educationally. You've got lots of letters after your name.
Oh, yeah, I was on that achievement track for many years. And I also have read all self-help books I could get my hands on and personal development workshops and retreats and trainings for the inner work and inner shifts. And so there I was, having done it all and still not feeling happy and fulfilled. And it was a really despairing moment. And I started looking at what was I doing for my clients? Because my clients were actually shifting. They were shifting out of that numbness and into the fullness of their lives, overcoming those invisible inner barriers. What was I doing for them that I wasn't doing for myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that with all of my clients, I was using mind, body, energy, trauma healing tools, even though most of my clients didn't have any big traumatic experiences. They had pretty, normal, whatever that is,
No child abuse, no witness of violent crime. It wasn't like that.
Yeah, they didn't survive like combat and life-threatening experiences of other kinds. So, but they were all showing this telltale symptom of trauma, which is disconnection from the fullest authentic expression of who they are. Disconnection from their deep desires, disconnection from their bodies, from the fullest experience of being alive and expressing themselves in all areas of their lives. And of course, that disconnection is a symptom of trauma. And I started to wonder, well, what kind of trauma could we all share? What kind of trauma is there that we're not seeing? And research at the time was coming out in the field of epigenetics that was showing that traumatic experiences are genetically transmitted. And that was my light bulb moment. Women have been oppressed for millennia. Oppression is traumatic. Trauma is genetically transmitted. And that was the moment of the download of Patriarchy Stress Disorder. Understanding that it is a traumatic experience that we have inherited. It is generational and collective trauma of oppression that is now forming these invisible inner barriers to our happiness and fulfillment in every area of our lives, because all areas of our lives where we have these bigger desires now, financial, love, our relationship with our bodies, our mission and voice in the world, these have been completely prohibited and punishable for women over millennia. So that trauma is a very visceral embodied experience that sits in our subconscious. It lives in our bodies. And even though we think all the progressive thoughts, empowered thoughts, our subconscious doesn't care what we think. It is there to keep us safe. And safety has been for women under patriarchy in playing it small, in not being in touch with our desires, in not using our voices, in not having our own money and being financially independent. That was never on the menu. So this is all very, very new for us. And this discovery has changed everything because now we can see clearly there's nothing wrong with us if we are quote unquote getting in our own way or self-sabotaging in any area. It's not you. It is PSD. And like any other trauma, it can be healed. And we're doing it very successfully with mind, body, energy healing tools.
So I want to pull this apart for my listeners just a little bit before we move on in the conversation. So you say the name for the hidden barriers to our, I'm going to read exactly what you said, our authentic expression of ourselves and what we want, our wealth building, our success in life, our experience of being a fulfilled human being as a woman could be the symptoms of the trauma of patriarchy.
Yes.
Okay. So can you, not to mince the details, but what's your definition of patriarchy?
That's a great question, actually. And it gives me an opportunity to clarify that when I say patriarchy, I don't mean men. I don't mean men in your life. I don't mean men in general. And when I say, men, I don't mean patriarchy either. Patriarchy is a system of inequality and oppression that has over 10,000 years of its existence. It has robbed women of our voices, of our ownership of our bodies, of our resources, such as finances.
And it's worth noting, you say in the book, it's also robbed men of the ability to express any way of being that isn't traditionally male, that isn't domineering, that isn't strong or in some cases violent. And so there's patriarchy stress disorder for men too.
100%, Hillary. Thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for reading the book. I appreciate that. 100%. And we're actually now, as we're working with women in our programs, women bring their men into the conversation. They give them the book. And a part of our mission now is elevating relationships, evolving relationships out of those patriarchal models into true authentic partnerships. And we are inviting men who are partnered, who are partners of women we're working with. We are actually starting a beta version of a program where we're all together. I actually work with my partner as well, who is my life partner and who is my partner in doing this work. His name is Jeffrey. And he will be leading this beta program. At this point, it's a give to women and their partners who are already working with us. And then it will be a separate freestanding offering. But absolutely, this is the next frontier of helping men also heal, because no man actually fits into that caricature, two-dimensional patriarchal cutout of what's understood as being a patriarchal man, aggressive, non-feeling.
The warrior.
But like cut off from his nurturing and emotional sides. Like no human is like that. And it has cost us collectively a great deal. It has cost us, like what we're experiencing now, all the issues in society that are coming up now to the degree where it's not sustainable, it's not tolerable anymore, including racism, including all other systems of inequality and oppression, have only been made possible because we have all been disconnected from our full humanity. Men, white men specifically, because they've been holding the power, right? So that's the deeper wounding of patriarchy that it's very urgent for us to heal.
It is. And one of the things I really saw for myself, and I want to make sure to articulate for listeners today is, and this isn't to discredit or disempower any of the massive accomplishments that you all are making right now in the world of business and education and competition, but that essentially what we've been trained to do is to run the man's race. To try to succeed inside a system that is fundamentally patriarchal. We're trying to win their game, calling it empowerment.
Yeah.
And I want to read this quote from the book. I think I've read this 15 times. Women's empowerment has gotten hijacked by the patriarchal overculture and became about giving a woman the opportunity to burn herself out by working harder and doing more while playing by the patriarchal rules. They used to burn us at the stake. Now they just hand us the torches.
Amen, sister.
Dr. Valerie. I hope everyone is blown back. I hope no one's driving as they're reading this. They're just like, whoa, can you comment on that? They hand us the torches.
Yeah, that's powerful, right? It's
We're all burning each other at the stake. We're all burning our own sense of peace of mind and ability to love. I mean, what's happening, Dr. Valerie? What's the problem and what's the solution?
Yeah. The problem is that now it's both the problem and the solution in one. So we are the first generation who has the opportunity to play big in the world, to love who we love, to use our voices in this culture, right? In the US specifically, and where I live now, I'm not from the US. Originally, I'm from Russia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very aware that it's not everywhere in the world where women have this privilege, the privileges that we here enjoy. And so understanding that privilege, understanding this opportunity that we have now to play big, to show up without the fear of being burned at the stake, right? Or other kinds of punishment, and earn our own money and be financially independent. That's all very new. A woman in the US could not open her own bank account until 1960s.
Until the 1970s, yeah.
Oh, 70s even.
Depending on which piece you read, the date varies. But the point is, used to be you had to have a man on your application.
Yeah. And that's very recent. It's very recent.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us were already alive when that happened. And in 1988, the law passed after a lot of advocacy through NABL specifically, allowing women, enabling women to take out a business loan without a male relative cosigner. 1988. It's all very new. We're the first generation who has these opportunities. And our biology has not caught up with the current time reality. It has not caught up with the current time reality. To our biological wiring, to our subconscious, having money equals mortal danger, unsafe, not allowed. Loving who we love, same. Having pleasure, joy, happiness, you're going to get yourself killed. You're not here for that. You're here to serve and sacrifice as a woman. That's the programming in our subconscious. So that is both the problem and it is an opportunity. The problem is because it feels unsafe. So here we are, we're showing up, we're playing big, and our nervous system is running the survival programming, and it goes unsafe. And that's why we see these women who are playing big with adrenal fatigue, with autoimmune conditions, can't sleep, can't relax without a glass of wine or a pill, can't have intimacy, either being single or being in a relationship where things could be better. And it's not our fault. It's not our fault. It's our nervous system in hypervigilance.
Massive overload.
In massive overload because it's unsafe, and it's unsafe. We're hypervigilant. We go into fight, flight, or freeze. And then there are women who are in freeze and can't get in touch with what I authentically want, don't have the clarity, can't move forward, can't make the money, can't find the partner, can't. And again, it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's the nervous system signaling it's unsafe, and it's doing a heck of a job keeping you safe. And the opportunity is in rewiring the nervous system. We teach specific protocols that are science-based. They're based in neuroscience and biology and epigenetics and psychology for the mind and the body to work together. And instead of trying to override our biology, actually use it organically to our advantage, simply rewiring what is now, what was unsafe then and what's unsafe now. Because what was unsafe then, for example, is for us, for a woman to be earning her own money. That was unsafe. That wasn't even on the menu.
Right.
Now it's unsafe not to have money. It's unsafe. It has changed. It has flipped 180. But our biology and our subconscious, they don't know that. And according to neuroscience, our actions are decided in our subconscious. Our actions are decided in our subconscious. So it doesn't matter what you think, how confident you are. If you're experiencing some self-sabotage, if your life, if your outer reality doesn't exactly reflect your deepest authentic desires, well, perhaps it's not you. Maybe it's PSD.
And 2 points to make on that. First, I want to circle back to this rewiring the nervous system, because I really feel like that's the period at the end of the sentence today. But I also want to address your statement that it has historically been unsafe for us to build money, for us to build wealth. And I was interviewed on a show. Most of my listeners probably haven't heard of this person. He's a man and he's prolific in my industry. And I said, I'm just really committed to women building wealth in their own names. And he just couldn't get it. He said, what do you mean? You actually take money out of their husband's accounts and put them in? And I said, no, you don't. It's energetic. It's a commitment. He just couldn't. He's like, what do you mean wealth in their own names? I said, well, let me ask you about your wife. Given how the accounts are balanced in your marriage, is most of the wealth actually titled to you? And he said, well, yeah, but that's how it has to be. And I said, no, it's not how it has to be.
Wow.
Right. And so that's one of the things I really get committed to with women. And one of the resistance points I hear from women about building wealth is, well, I'm afraid I'm dating and I'm in my mid to late 30s. And, there's women here in Silicon Valley whose tech companies are helping them pay to freeze their eggs so they can work more into their later 30s. And that's a choice each woman has to make. But so now they're coming into a dating relationship with more wealth, with more income, and they're afraid it's not sexy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's us being crushed by this male expectation of dominance. And yet in a world where we're staying single longer and longer and have to support ourselves in higher cost living environments. So it's like, it's a catch-22.
Yep. I'm still processing your interview with this man. Good for you for educating.
What do you mean wealth in your own name? Why would that matter? Well, only a man would say that. Right?
But that goes to show, like you asked me earlier, what is patriarchy, right? That is patriarchy. It's everywhere.
I know. And it's sort of the behind the scenes, I just can't get it kind of comments about racism that we're hearing in the current news now. It's like, what do you mean racism? Racism
I'm not
happening.
a racist. And the fact is that there is so much overlap, of course, with racism and patriarchy because it's water we've been swimming in for such a long time. And of course, we all think of ourselves as progressive and aware. And when we start looking at those things, what's in the subconscious? Okay, forget what you're thinking, because we're all thinking the quote unquote right things.
Yeah.
But what's in the subconscious? Because that's actually what's showing up in your outer reality. How's your outer reality set up? How's your wealth? How's your love life? How's your happiness and satisfaction? Right? And that's how we see what's in the subconscious, because that's what's driving the bus. That's what's deciding the game. And regarding that, it's not, that back to your point about it, quote unquote, not being sexy, right? When you're financially empowered, right? Running into patriarchy internally and externally in our programs, that's one of the huge discoveries that women make from their own subconscious that always surprises them. When we go to investigate what's getting in the way of them going to the next level of income, revenue in their business, for example, they discover that, in my subconscious, and we have specific techniques for getting there. It's not something you think about and then just comes up. We go through the body specifically to give us hints, because that's where trauma lives. And they discover that, oh my gosh, there is this deep-seated fear that if I make more than my husband, he's going to leave.
Right.
He's going to reject me. It's not going to work. And then, of course, they do.
Or he won't have sex with me.
Because it's not sexy, right? Whatever that patriarchal conditioning sits there. And of course, they then do a reality check with their husband, and the husband's laugh and please out her and me. Do whatever you want.
Bring home the bacon, lady.
Yes, they were all like, yes, I'm 100% on board. And then we begin to heal what's actually right, what's that sabotaging that in the subconscious. But that's fascinating discovery. Like none of us would think, oh my gosh, like, oh yeah, I'm scared of making more. Like that's laughable, right? But in the subconscious, that's what's holding us back. And you
Yes.
only know from what is in your bank account. How is your kind of the ledger of your life's satisfaction and happiness it looks? Yeah, fascinating.
It is fascinating. And at this point, I've had the privilege of being able to financially coach women for so long that I can literally look at the income and the assets and kind of the mix of it all and like have a really good idea of what's actually happening. And I think money happens to be a very objective, you can measure it objectively. So in my practice, that empowers me as a coach, but it really does tell a story. And you talk a lot about reading self-help books and this message to women, this sort of individualistic self-empowerment message. And particularly you rail against stop holding yourself back. There's this message to just go for it, right? And so give us your reaction to that.
Money tells the story. I love this so much. Yeah, stop holding yourself back. That's where that patriarchal hijack happens also in self-help industry. It all becomes like kind of a tool of oppression and making women feel guilty and ashamed and bad about themselves. Hey, you were failing. You were failing in personal growth. You were holding yourself back. And the truth of the matter is that we are we are not consciously able to override what's in our subconscious, what's in our body. And it wouldn't be a good idea anyway, because these are survival mechanisms. We're not here to override them. It's a horrible idea. Without them, we would just like be killed crossing the street. We are here to work with them, to help them evolve. And disregarding that those slogans, like really disregard that, stop getting in your own way, get out of your own way, stop holding yourself back. That's really, really dangerous because just it creates that further disempowerment. A woman feels that, oh my gosh, like here I am failing again. It creates that false confirmation loop. Well, see, I can't even make this work. I've read all the books. And I was in that place too when my PSD awakening happened. I've read all the books I could get my hands on and workshops, et cetera, et cetera. So, but what we see when we actually start working with the subconscious, we see that, and we have a process. I have a 5-step system, and we identify what's holding us back, as I call them prison guards, referring to PSD and other traumas as the invisible in the prison. And those prison guards are protective mechanisms that are there in our minds, in our bodies, in our actions to keep us safe. And then we evolve them to our bodyguards so that instead of staying safe in prison, we can move toward our desires. And what we see happen with that, we have women who, you're going to like that, who have quadrupled, 5x'd their revenue within just a few weeks of doing this work in our program. They tell these in jailbreak stories and the testimonials on my website, drvalerie.com/testimonials. And this was actually an unexpected outcome because we do now. We didn't when we recorded those testimonials. We didn't specifically teach to restoring our relationship with money. We taught to recognizing and shifting those defense mechanisms from PSD. And then we saw, oh my gosh, most women in our programs, we have a mix, but most women are business owners. Mm-hmm. And they're able to just show up bigger, use their voices, be more authentic, and then boom, like 4x, 5x their revenue very quickly. And we're like, oh my gosh, now we're going to actually include an element of psychological and energetic and physical, biological reclamation of our relationship with money, where it actually feels safe to build wealth. And I see this beautiful overlap or going hand in hand of what you do and what we do with that, because it's a big work. It's a big reclamation. And we actually recently did our first, we held our first virtual retreat,
Mhm.
and we're going to be doing them on a seasonal basis. So the next one is coming up, and listeners can learn more at thethrivingexperience.com. And it's an amazing experience. We've had big shifts happen from that, and it's free. And what we saw, what I heard loud and clear, was women, all the women there, brilliant, committed to their transformation. And pretty much all of them were struggling financially. And I went on such a rant, inspired rant, which I didn't plan. I didn't plan on going there, but it came in as very urgent during the event. But why the F don't you have money?
Right.
Not as a judgment, but as a really big question. Why don't you have money? Why don't you have talents? Don't you have value?
Value.
Yes, you do. Tons. And in this day and age, everybody has a phone. Everybody has access to the internet. We can offer our talents to anyone on the planet anytime and enter into this value exchange. But there's an issue. First of all, PSD blocks us from even recognizing our value, let alone receiving money for it. And that's a big block. And that, I feel, in conjunction with financial education and asking these big questions is really urgent for us to heal. Because unless women have their own financial resources, wealth in their own name, thank you very much,
Yes.
Hillary, for that.
In your name.
In their name. We don't have access to the levers, to moving the levers in society that we need to move. We don't have access.
You don't have power. If you're broke, you have to find someone with purse strings to fund you, right? Or you just have to yell louder than the crowd, which eventually leads to resources coming into your accounts. But it's like, yeah, you have to be in right and powerful relationship with wealth to exert power, loving power, influential power on the world. And that's what we so much want right now.
I love this so much. It's not the time to be barefoot kind of in the kitchen. And I mean, if it's in your pleasure, by all means, be barefoot in the kitchen while accumulating wealth at the same time. Please, please, please. The world depends on it. It's not even a matter of personal choice. It's a matter of collective urgency right now.
And specifically, and by the way, I'm not shocked at all that unraveling patriarchy stress disorder in your clients leads to increased revenue. In fact, I'd be shocked if it didn't. And it has, because money isn't a thing to be weighed and measured or kept or lost. Money is energy. Money is a conversation. And as soon as you can accept abundance in your life, and I would bet, I just have a hypothesis that a woman who can accept a compliment also has money in her bank accounts.
There is a correlation. And that would be fun, a fun study. Maybe we
really would.
Let's do this study, Hillary. That will be so fun. Yes.
What is the correlation here?
There is a correlation. I have that hypothesis too. It will be fun to test.
And I hope this isn't putting you on the spot, but I do want to talk about Leslie, who's on page 35 of your book, who was deaf, so to speak, to a very lucrative offer. Do you remember this story Yeah. Would you tell her story so my listeners can hear?
Yeah, Leslie is an unforgettable story indeed. She was interested in doing this work in uncovering and healing PSD. So we got on the phone. It was our first meeting. And she was telling me about herself. And she is a professional who she's been in her career for many years, and she was transitioning into entrepreneurship as well. And she invested a lot in this transition. She was confident, and she invested in being in this very high level mastermind with somebody whose name everybody knows. And so she was at this table, and after hearing what she had to share at the mastermind, one of the participants came up to her and said, "You know what? You're what you have to offer so aligns with what I need in my business right now, I would so appreciate the opportunity to work with you and benefit from your expertise. So I have this consulting opportunity. I would compensate you. And he offered over 350,000 for that consulting package. And when she was sharing the story with me, she then quickly moved on to other things. And of course, I was very curious, like, what happened?
Right.
Like, what do you mean? What happened with the consulting offer? What offer? And it became very clear to me that although obviously she registered, a part of her brain registered exactly what happened, but another part of her brain, where those prison guards are nested, rejected it. So they made her, as you put it, made her deaf,
Yeah.
blind, just like it never happened. She actually didn't process it as, okay, it was a real thing for me. It was an offer for me to consider. It was my value that he was seeing and offering, this translation of my value into this lucrative sum of money. And after working through that, again, one meeting, one phone call, that we had Zoom call, she was able to see that as PSD at play, and she went back to this other entrepreneur. The offer was still on the table. And then her prison guards went into high gear, and she wrote back to me. She said, no, she doesn't want to work on that. She doesn't want to work on healing PSD, and she doesn't want to work on that consulting gig. And there were a million justifications to that, because that's how prison guards operate. They always have like a grain of truth to everything they say.
Yes.
But the outcome is the outcome. Does it move you closer to your desires or away? And in her case, it was pretty clear what was going on. And so I wish I could have told you a story with this happy ending, right? And Leslie, like her bank accounts were overflowing and her impact in the world, and she like lived happily ever after. And unfortunately, that's not the story I can tell. And exactly what happened is exactly what happened. And it illustrates how PSD operates so clearly. And the question is, how much money are you leaving on the table every day by not seeing the opportunities around you? And we all have those million and $1 billion opportunities. And again, money tells the story, right? It's not the whole story, but it's a very fun, it's a very fun metric to go by in my world as well. How many opportunities are there that we're just blind to because of PSD, because prison guards keep us safe from owning our value and receiving compliments, receiving money, receiving reflections of our value. And that to me is a huge tragedy, a huge crisis, a huge pandemic going in the world right now, that it's urgent. It's urgent for us to heal. Thank you so much for asking about Leslie. I really appreciate it.
Yes, this is my nightmare when I coach people, is how many opportunities are they being presented with that I never hear about because they're completely deaf to it, right? So I thought that was really poignant what you shared about Leslie, and I'm hoping women can hear themselves in that. Let's talk about rewiring the nervous system. What is the solution? And can you describe this in detail? It is a little woo for me now. I'm willing to consider anything. And in fact, I'm probably going to participate, but I need, when you talk about mind and body and nervous system, I just think, well, explain that. Help me understand.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And these are my favorite stories, actually. Again, like we have a lot of these stories in the testimonials where a woman starts by saying, I was very skeptical. like, okay, I don't know about that. And then what happened? So the 5-step system that I use, I've been refining it or distilling it over 20 years of my work in the field, that started out as kind of more traditional psychological approach, then figuring, oh, okay, through my own experiences, that talking about it really doesn't work. It doesn't lead to big, profound changes.
No.
But working somehow, working with the body and the mind together and the energetics of it creates shifts. So the 5-step system goes from what we're doing now. It's waking up in prison. It's seeing that, oh my gosh, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's PSD. Maybe it's the layers of ancestral, collective, personal traumas, and really beginning to see how they play out, what opportunities we're not seeing because of them, what steps we're not taking because of them, how we are dispersing our energy, time, and money, because right, no access to our power is granted by this invisible inner prison, or very little. So then we move on to meet our prison guards. These are trauma defenses that live in our minds and our bodies and in actions. And they range from stories that are always rational, by the way, rational stories of, oh no, this is not going to work. And, or who wants to hear from me? Or it's not possible, right? It's not possible for me to get a raise, or it's not possible for me to start a business, or whatever the story is. In the body, they show up as oftentimes anxious energy, or depressive energy, or different inflammations and imbalances in the body, migraines, other chronic pains. And that inflammation is an expression of unprocessed trauma, unprocessed emotions, unprocessed trauma. And we see a lot of that happening right now. And adrenal fatigue, as I already mentioned, right, from nervous system being constantly in overdrive. So in actions, they show up in kind of fight, flight, freeze types of actions, either going into distractions mode or going into addictive behaviors, or being in freeze when we actually want to move toward creating something in the world that we will be in alignment with our desires. So we help, by doing this rewiring of the nervous system, we help them evolve from prison guards to bodyguards. And how we do it is by creating safety first. Safety first, always. That's why the prison guards are holding us back. So instead of using that route, we use specific practices that create the experience of safety in the body and the nervous system, and we stabilize it so it becomes our normal. And from safety, we can then open up to expansion, to pleasure, to greater visibility, and whatever it is, greater wealth, more amazing relationships, because all of that pushes on the safety buttons from the old traumas, and healing that, creating safety, creates expansion. And then in the 4th stage, we go into tunnel digging. We dig, excavate, and heal deeper layers of trauma. And in the 5th one, I call it savoring freedom. That's my favorite one. But the work there is kind of only just beginning, in a different way. The speed limit on how much money, how much pleasure, how much goodness we can experience in our lives, that speed limit is set very low by the patriarchy. And with that, our capacity to have that is also limited. Our energetic physical capacity to receive and work with it and give is compromised, because it hasn't been practiced.
Right.
And it has been, there's a lot of trauma around it for millennia. So we actually use the tools then to expand our receiving capacity and keep on raising that speed limit on all the good things we get to have. And that's sort of in a nutshell how we move through. And there are some examples of the techniques that we use that are in the book. And in the Thriving Experience, that free virtual retreat that we are having seasonally, we actually take women through the experience of that shift from survival to thriving, so that they can actually feel it in their body. And that's very exciting, because it's something that's really hard to explain, right, in words. That's part of the reason why like talk therapy cannot take us there, and just like changing the way we think.
Okay, but give me a sense for the analyticals who are listening. I wouldn't ask you to give your special sauce, so no one's going to sign an NDA before hearing you. But how do you actually accomplish that?
So the nervous system goes into fight, flight, freeze, that
Yes.
sympathetic response triggered by the sense of being unsafe. The nervous system goes into parasympathetic response, which is relaxation, receptivity, growth, pleasure, all are possible, and rest. Rest are
Yes.
only possible in parasympathetic response. Our nervous systems are hanging out in sympathetic pretty much all the time by default. And so, a part of what happens with this work, a part of this shift, is that we retrain the nervous system to hang out more in parasympathetic. And that kind of it kind of slows down the whirling of the mind, the anxiety goes down. There is more presence and connection that women experience. There's clarity, and they make decisions much faster in their intuitive decisions, and their decisions that they are grateful for going forward, versus like going to this over analysis for a long time and then looking back like shit, that was not a good decision after all.
Yeah, it's too much. You can't run the marathon 24/7.
Yeah, so that's a big part of the shift that we're creating. Does this begin to answer your question?
Well, okay. And I too struggle to tell some stories, because you can describe what it's like to get balance on a bicycle, but you certainly can't give someone the experience of it. I
Yeah.
get it. So it sounds like the answer is, in part, Hillary, it's experiential. And so I guess one of my last questions is, okay, is it a meditation? Is it physical touch? You've said it's not talk therapy. Is it reliving the trauma? How is it actually accomplished?
Great. I'm so glad you're asking me that. I'll start from the last thing you said. We have a lot of women who have been searching for a trauma therapist, have been going after like EMDR, for example. Those who have been on this journey know what that is, one of the trauma healing modalities, and have been actually rejected by EMDR therapists who have said to them, cannot work with you because you either don't have the exact memory of the traumatic experience, or you're not willing to tell it, or whatever. In our work, there is no telling or even remembering of the traumatic experience. So most of them we don't even know because we have inherited them, or some happened pre-verbally. Like I released trauma, for example, of feeling my mother's anxiety when I was in her womb, and that communicating to my body that the world was unsafe. And creating that high charge in my nervous system even before I was born, right? Things like that. So we don't tell stories necessarily. You're welcome to share. We hold a safe space for that, but it's not a part of what creates the transformation. We go directly into the body, and how this works is we train women to track the sensations. And again, it's part of it, right? It's one aspect of the work. We track the sensations in the body that come up, for example, when you're faced with this new big opportunity, right? We notice what thoughts are present, what prison parts show up on the level of thoughts, and which ones show up on the level of sensation. How does your body actually experience that? Is there contraction? Is there some tension in the stomach? Is there like twitching in the left eye? I don't know, I'm making this up, whatever that is, right? And then we go and we engage in this kind of dialogue with the sensation. What is this about? What is it protecting you from? We release tension there by using specific techniques and creating an experience of safety right here and now. And that experience of safety allows the story that's holding us back to release. So instead of changing the story and then seeing what happens, we release what's driving the story, which is feeling unsafe in the body, by working with the body directly. Does that paint more of a picture?
It absolutely does. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. I appreciate that.
That is tangible for me. I can get it. You know, I'll give you an example. I have always said to my team, first of all, I don't want to manage a big team. And the first time we have an HR issue, I quit. So I have lived in fear of my team. I mean, essentially having a sexual harassment. I'm not sexually harassing my team, but that it would happen amongst the team. And so I have said, I will never own a big organization. And yet I have a massive vision. And so when you said, what are the prison guards? What comes up when you think about expansion? That was right there. And I thought, oh, okay. So that's actually maybe a prison guard.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for getting on this journey of untangling PhD beyond reading the book.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. And so then the answer is the keys to getting involved with you and your trauma healing are to attend one of the quarterly workshops that you can access at thethrivingexperience.com. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Of course, reading the book would be the first step.
There you go.
Before you commit to a 3-day experience, that's important. And once you have that experience, then it's very easy for you to know whether or not you want to continue this journey. We have 2 levels of programs that we offer. There is a 2-month program called the Thriving Solution that walks through the first 3 steps of the system. And then we have a year-long program, the Thriving Circle, where we go more in depth over all the 5 steps. There are in-person retreats that are a part of the program. There is one-on-one work that's also involved as a part of the program. It's more intimate and it goes deeper into healing. And so, but the first step would be, I guess, downloading the first chapter of the book. It's at drvalerie.com/book. And there are some book resources there also. And I also have a podcast that you can see if that's one of your preferred learning media. You can see what resonates from there. So it's the Dr. Valerie podcast, drvalerie.com/podcast.
Perfect. And we will be linking to all of those resources in the show notes for today's episode at hillaryhendershot.com/167.
I like that number.
Do you? Well, perfect.
I do.
I picked it for you, woman. Okay. Dr. Valerie, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate you. It's profound to hear what women are doing to heal other women from these, what you call traumas. I haven't used that word much, but absolutely it fits. And I love listening to your voice. And so thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Hillary.
Hey, Profit Boss. If after listening to today's episode, you think you might be ready to take meaningful actions with your wealth and perhaps consider working with me and my firm in some way, then I'd love to hear from you. Just go to hillaryhendershot.com/hello. That's Hillary with 1 L and Hendershot with 2 T's. .com/hello. When I'm not sitting behind the mic, I'm running Hendershot Wealth Management. We're a fee-only fiduciary financial advisory firm. We work with women and couples to take their finances to the next level. Everything I talk about here on the show gets personalized and put to work for my clients. So I ask you, why wait till tomorrow when you can start realizing your full wealth potential today? The life you want to live, it doesn't have to wait. Just imagine the freedom and joy you'll experience when you've secured your retirement and enjoyed the years leading up to it. That's what I want for you. That's what I do for my clients. And if that's what you want for yourself, just head on over to my website right now, hillaryhendershot.com/hello. All of our initial conversations are totally complimentary. So let's just see where a friendly conversation may lead. hillaryhendershot.com/hello. As we wrap things up here for today, I need to review with you the things I have to disclose as a fiduciary financial advisor offering wealth management services through my firm, Hendershot Wealth Management, LLC. You should know that the opinions I express on Profit Boss Radio are my own, and they can change. The content I provide in the show is for general education. It's not intended as specific investment advice, nor do I recommend any specific financial products. Unlike how I roll at home with my husband, I can't guarantee that my statements, opinions, or forecasts are always 100% right. Of course, I wish I could peek into that proverbial crystal ball, but so far, I haven't found it. Past performance is not indicative of future results. I talk a lot about indexes, and I want you to know you can't actually buy an index because, of course, when you take a list of companies and create a product that allows people to invest in those companies, there are fees and expenses involved that reduce returns. Remember, all investing involves risk, which, as you know, means you could lose your money. And I have to tell you that there is no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. And that should keep my lawyers happy. Have a great day.